Hey everyone, I'm Mila. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and today I'm going to continue talking about type 1 diabetes. In this video, I'm going to cover diagnosis and treatment, and I'm only going to cover like some of the treatments because there are so many things that diabetics can do to help treat their condition. I put treat in air quotes because it's a lifelong condition. As we learned last time, it's chronic, so it's something that will never go away. There's no cure. And when a lot of people think of treatments, they think of something that will cure the disease. That's not the case with type 1. A treatment is something to lessen the symptoms, basically. Because the disease, the thing that's wrong in your body, is still wrong in your body from the time you develop it until you pass. That's just kind of the way it works. So just a reminder, because this video is also going to be a little bit medicine heavy. If you think you have type 1 diabetes or any other medical condition, please go see a doctor. I am not a doctor. I want to be, and that's why I'm doing this kind of research to begin with. However, I am not a doctor. So if you think you have type 1, please go see a doctor. They can get you the help and treatment and information that fits you and your specific case better than I can. I'm just someone who can, read a web page on the internet, learn from my college classes, and record a video. That's not a doctor by any means. So as I mentioned just a little bit ago, I do research online. Those links will be, or the sources that I use will be cited down below. Please feel free to check them out. Please also feel free to do your own research from credible sources, because that's important too. And also, this video is titled All About Type 1 Diabetes Part 2 for a reason. If I say diabetes, please assume that I mean type 1 and not type 2 and type 1, because there's like some differences, and I don't want to say diabetes is blah, 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 blah. And then people are like, but type 2 isn't that way. I mean type 1 when I say diabetes in these videos, because type 1 diabetes is a lot longer than just diabetes. Also, I don't know if you guys have noticed, maybe you have, but I'm filming this with not my cell phone. See, my phone is right here. I'm filming this on a video camera that I got for my birthday recently. So tell me how everything looks down below. I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do lighting while I'm still at home, and if it gets a lot darker on this side of my face, that's because the sun is going down and has mostly set already. So if this side of my face is significantly darker, that's why. I meant to film before the sunset, but that just didn't happen today. My cats were very cuddly and needy, and you don't want to film when you have a cat that's trying to cling to you. It's just, it doesn't work as well. Okay, so now with all of those things out of the way, let's get into the video. My cats, I have two of them, Pepper and Jackson. Pepper is a 10-year-old black and white domestic short hair cat, and Jackson is a 2-year-old snowshoe Siamese. He's very cute, but his energy is much different than Pepper's. And I've had Pepper's for her whole life, so for 10 years. And she's being very needy right now. Oh goodness, she's walking through my tripod. Ah! Okay. So she is actually in my room right now because she was fighting with Jackson over my room. So if you hear bells tinkling, that's her being a nuisance in my room. Here she is. She doesn't like being picked up very much, but I figure I'd show her off because I mentioned her. So she's here now. If you hear bells and everything, or meowing, she's in here. Okay, so I mentioned talking about diagnosis and treatment. Diagnosis is the first thing that we're covering. So in order to be properly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, so specifically that your immune cells have been killed by your own body, there are some tests and things that have to be run to ensure that you're getting diagnosed with the proper type of diabetes. Sorry, Pepper can't lay on my bed because my camera bag and other stuff is there. And so she's like, where do I go? I don't understand. So your doctor, of course, should take your blood sugar if they think that you have type 1 or any type of diabetes, really. And then depending on whether or not you're doing like a fasting blood sugar or not, there are some different like ranges that are acceptable for how high your blood sugar is, and how, like, what is the level at which it can be diagnosable as diabetes. So one example is if you're doing a fasting blood sugar, if it's greater than 126 milligrams per deciliter on 2 different tests. And then if you're just doing a random blood sugar, there's no like time frame for when you have eaten last. Anything over 200, along with other symptoms of diabetes, which we went over last time. And then there's the hemoglobin A1C test. If that's greater than 6.5 on 2 different tests, then that's like diagnosable. A1C is a test that diabetics get a lot. I've been getting it roughly every 3 months since I was diagnosed. The first one I had, I believe I was in the upper teens, I'll say that. It was at like it was between 17 and 19. Those are the 2 numbers that my brain is saying, but I don't know which one because I was not well when I got that test result back. But now it's much, much lower. I'm under 7 now. I think I'm getting closer to 6. Pepper just jumped in my laundry hamper. This is gonna be a fun video. Okay. Let me look back at my notes. Okay, so A1C is a test that diabetics get a lot. As I just said, it tells you basically how much sugar has been attached to the hemoglobin in your blood. Hemoglobin is a protein that, hemoglobin is a protein that carries oxygen to your cells, as well as other things, I'm sure. But it primarily carries oxygen on the heme group, which is an iron, which is attached to the protein. Iron is not an amino acid, it just gets bonded to the amino acids in the protein sequence. And it tells you like how well you've controlled your sugar levels for the past 2 to 3 months. That past 2 to 3 months is because that's how long red blood cells, where hemoglobin is, last in your body. That's their lifespan. You really gonna be that noisy? You gonna be noisy? And then shaking the camera again, probably. Okay, so those blood sugar tests are used for both type 1 and type 2 just to see, is this diabetes or not? And then, so, like, how do you tell the difference between the two? Because they would show up the same on those tests, probably. Again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lab worker, I don't know, but I would assume they would run the same on these tests, with how high your blood sugar is and what your A1C is. They would probably look about the same. So how can you tell? Well, there are different tests that you can do. And misdiagnosis between the two is common, especially if you're like me and you get type 1 when you're older. As I said in a previous video, the most common age to get diagnosed with type 1 is around 14 in the States. I was 19. That's very different. So if I had been, say, 20, well, not 20, because I almost was 20. If I had been older than like 25, 30, they probably would have assumed that it was type 2 instead of type 1, just because I would be like older. You're not old if you're 25 or 30. I would have been more of an adult than I was at 19. Because you're a teenager when you're 19, and when you're 25 and 30, you're not a teenager anymore. So they could have just misdiagnosed me as type 2, but they didn't. Thank goodness. And they didn't misdiagnose me because they did a lot of extra tests. So you can, let me make sure I pronounce this word right. You can be tested for autoantibodies, which only develop when your body is attacking itself. Auto means self in Latin, and then antibodies are things that show up in the blood to show, but that can show you kind of what your immune cells have been fighting off. When I was diagnosed, they did a test where so when insulin is produced, it's a really long protein chain that gets transcribed from the DNA. When a protein goes through, like, it first gets transcribed and then it like folds up and gets like chopped into bits that sorry, Pepper's being very cute. It gets chopped into like, it can get chopped up and like reattached in different ways so that it's a functional protein. And then once you chop those little bits up, sometimes they're leftover pieces. With insulin, there is a leftover piece. And I got tested to see if they could find that leftover piece, because if my body was producing insulin at all, that little piece would be findable. They didn't find it, and that's how they knew it was type 1 and not type 2. So the reason I know that is because I've taken many biology classes, and I know how DNA, mRNA, and all of that works. So I can't remember the name of the test. I can't find it in my paperwork or online. I don't remember the name of it. But it's for a piece of protein, not an autoantibody, I don't think. Because those are different things. An antibody gets put on by blood cells, and this protein really wouldn't be, to my understanding. So another test that can be done is a test for ketones. I'm sure everyone has heard of a ketogenic diet, and ketones are ketones are a byproduct of your body burning fat rather than glucose for its energy source, which is why it's called a ketogenic diet. It's trying to get your body to burn fat instead of glucose for an energy source. It's not doing it full time. That's why you still eat some carbs, but you severely limit the number of carbohydrates you eat, basically, for the keto diet. So some fat burning is okay. Obviously, that's what happens when we exercise and when we do keto diets and things like that. By the way, I'm not promoting a ketogenic diet. I've not looked into that. It's just an easy comparison that a lot of people have probably heard of. But if it's the only energy source, like fat burning, if that's the only energy source, that's really not good for your body, because it's not as efficient as glucose is. And as burning fat is not as good of an energy source as burning glucose. That's what I'm trying to say. Words are hard tonight, and I don't know why. Hi, it's me from editing. I am going through and editing the footage right now, and there was a weird issue with my mic audio from the next clip after this one until the end of the video. So I had to use my camera footage audio. So if it sounds a little bit different, that's why. Okay, back to the video now. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to talking about treatments. And I'm gonna list like the major types of, like, I'm just gonna list them. Like take insulin, or count your carbs, that kind of thing. I'm gonna list those. And then in the rest of this video and next video, I'm going to cover more in depth each like treatment. Again, I say treatment because it's not a cure. It is treating the disease, but it's not going to stop the disease from happening. And a lot of times people think, oh, like, let me think of a good example. Like, pain meds are treatment for pain because after you take pain meds, you no longer feel pain. Whatever is causing your pain is still happening within your body, if it's like, unless it's like inflammation, and then the pain reliever usually just reduces that inflammation. But if it's like, I don't know, you have a cut and it stings, and you take pain relievers, the cut is still there after you've taken the pain relievers. After I take insulin, I still have diabetes. My body just doesn't like have the symptoms of an untreated diabetic. That's why I say treatments. I've already explained this. Why am I going through it again? Okay, so things that you have to do after you've been diagnosed. You obviously have to take insulin, and you can either do that through injections or with a pump. This is the one that I'm going to really cover today. And then you have to count your carbs. as well as you should count other macromolecules. I don't really do that. Macromolecules are carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Those are the things that primarily make up our diet. We need to make sure that we're getting the right amounts of each one so that we stay healthy. You have to obviously monitor your blood sugar either through a CGM or a glucometer, those kinds of things. And then you should also have a generally healthy lifestyle. Get enough exercise, eat healthy foods, get enough sleep, don't be super stressed, or have good stress reduction like habits. All of those things are important for people with diabetes too. The light looked really bright in my camera, and so I turned it. So if the lighting looks different now, welcome. Hello. I just turned my ring light because it looked weird. So, yeah, let's move on to talking about insulin. So there are different types of insulin, which wasn't really explained well to me at first. Like, they were like, oh, these are the different types and this is what they do. It just didn't stick, because I was scared of what was going on. I didn't, like, have time to soak in all this information. So there is short-acting or regular insulin. It starts to work 30 minutes after you've given it to yourself. It peaks in 2 to 3 hours, so the amount of sugar it's letting into cells peaks at 2 to 3 hours, and then it keeps working for 3 to 6 hours, and then it's out of your system. Some examples of that are Humulin R and Novolin R. I couldn't really find some brand, like I think those are the brand names, I'm not sure. It sounds like it is, because there's Humalog and Novolog, so I would assume those are the brand names, but those are some examples of short-acting insulin. There's also rapid-acting insulin. That begins to work 15 minutes after you've given it to yourself. It peaks after 1 hour, and then it works for 2 to 4 hours, and then it's out of your system. Some examples of those are, I'm trying to read the names, Novolog and Humalog, and then Apidra. Apidra is the other one. Then there's intermediate acting insulin. That begins working after 2 to 4 hours after you've given it to yourself. It peaks between 4 and 12 hours and continues to work for 12 to 18 hours. And some examples of that are Novolin N and Humulin N. So those are those. And then there's also long-lasting insulin. Those take several hours to start working and last for about a day. Some examples of those are Lantus, Toujeo, Solostar, Levemir, and Tresiba. When I was first diagnosed with diabetes, I took a long-acting insulin and a rapid-acting insulin. Those changed when I went on a different insurance because my mom's work changed insurance. It was horrible and really annoying. And then that changed again when I went on a pump. But your doctor will help you decide which insulins are best for you, what will work with your insurance company, all those sorts of things. Of course, there are also other ways to take, or there are multiple ways to take insulin. You can't take insulin orally. That's the one way you can't, because insulin's a protein and your stomach acid is designed to disintegrate proteins. That's what it does when you eat meat, if you eat meat. That's what it does. It breaks down those proteins so that you can use those amino acids in your own cells. So you have to take it either you have to take it into your body, otherwise you can't eat it. So you usually, a lot of people use injections, like with a vial and needle, or pin and pin needles, and a lot of other people use the pump, which is what I use currently. Although I have used vial and needle, pin and pin needle, and now the pump. So I've used all three. They usually, from what I remember in the hospital, my doctors were like, we usually start people on pin and vial just so that they get used to it. So if their pump malfunctions or something, they can go back to that and it's no big deal. So usually you'll probably, throughout having diabetes, you'll probably experience multiple of these if you feel like getting off of vial and needle. It's just up to you, your doctor, and your insurance company, which in my opinion, shouldn't really be making these decisions, but whatever. We live in this, I live in the States, and that's how it works. Okay, so for either type of injection, either with a needle or with a pen needle, depending on if you're using a vial or a insulin pen, the needle is super thin. I know after a couple of days, honestly, of taking insulin, I didn't even feel the needle go in anymore. Needle is super, super thin. It's like it's not as thin as a strand of hair, but it's really thin like that. You don't really even feel it going in at all. It just gets injected under the skin, and it gets picked up by your capillaries, which take it into your bloodstream, and it starts working. So if that's how you're doing insulin, you'll be taking more than one type of insulin. You'll have, like I had long-lasting and rapid-acting. That's just kind of the way it works. You have to inject multiple times a day. I had to inject at every single meal and also at bedtime. And it's a problem if I miss an injection, because then my body doesn't have the insulin it needs, and so it starts freaking out and burning like fat again, and it's not happy to say the least. With a pump, there are also two options with a pump. You can have a pump with tubing, so you can kind of see it against my black shirt. I can take this, you know, I can unclip it from the port basically and put it somewhere else to charge while I go shower, or if I want to go swimming, I can do that and not have to have this electronic device on me. Let me just clip that back on my waistband. But you can also have pumps that don't have tubing. If you think you're gonna get it stuck a lot and it's gonna pull out a lot, you can also just get pumps that are just on your body, and the insulin is in there and you have to change it every so often. I have to change my pump my pump site every 3 days, same with the tubing and the cartridges and all that. So usually I just clip it to my waistband, and when I, like, at night, I put it in a pump belt. If I were to do some, like, intense exercise, I would also put it in a pump belt, just to hold it a little bit better and, like, keep it from bouncing all over the place, that kind of thing. So I'm gonna try to show you a little bit better. So obviously this is the tubing, and where is it? Do you see this little white dot? That's where you inject the insulin in. There's a little, like, cartridge in here. This is the back end of it. It's really hard to see. But you can see this little notch. This is the back end of the cartridge. This is like the whole front piece of it. And when you change it, you have to slide it out. I'm gonna do a whole video about how to change, like how to do all this stuff with your pump later. Not right now though. So there's only one type of insulin in here, and that's because you only take rapid acting insulin when you're on the pump. It just administers it around the clock, which is a little bit, it's better for you. That's what the doctors told me when I was like, what about a pump? Because I don't like having to carry around needles on a college campus. That's not very fun. Made me nervous. But so I'm only on Humalog right now. I'm not taking a long-acting insulin as well. So it's better for you to do it that way, which is what that's what my doctors talked to me about. They're like, this will be easier for you, so just do this. And I was like, great, I'll do that. I want to be on the pump. Let's go. Oftentimes pumps will pair with continuous glucose monitors. Mine does. Because I'm on both a CGM and a pump, I don't have to prick my fingers at all. I don't have to see my own blood unless I'm changing the CGM or the pump, which is great. I don't get queasy at blood, but some people do, I'm sure. So you also don't have to prick yourself. So I don't have to poke myself unless I'm changing them, obviously, for diabetes management at all. Like, I don't prick my fingers, like, at all, which is really nice because pricking your fingers sometimes hurts, especially if you don't do it on the sides. If you do it, like, on the pads of your fingers, it hurts so bad. But sometimes it's hard to get yourself to bleed on the edges of your finger. At least that's what I experienced. There's also artificial pancreases, which were approved by the FDA in 2016 if you were 14 or older. I honestly haven't heard that much about them, just because they are fairly new. 2016 to 2021 isn't that long, and I don't know that many people with artificial pancreases. It's called a closed loop insulin delivery system. So it's implanted into your skin. It links up to a CGM and it acts just like a pump, except it's implanted into your body. If you guys are interested in it, I can maybe make a video on these if I can find more information. So let me know if you want more information about artificial pancreases, because I'm curious too, honestly. But, you know, that would take a lot of digging, so just let me know what you want. So I am also nowhere near to being done talking about treatments. Obviously, you heard the big long list of, well, long list of treatments earlier, including carb counting and all that stuff. And I've only covered insulin and insulin delivery. So next time, or yeah, no, my first video in February is going to primarily cover treatments. I don't know if I'm going to get to add anything else, but if I do, I will let you know in the beginning of that video. So this is where I'm going to leave it today. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you would like to learn more about diabetes from a patient perspective, please subscribe below. As always, I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Stay healthy. Bye!